Hey guys, so remember me? I'm still making videos, kind of. Um, uh, yeah, I have not made a video in a while, and the reason for that is I've just had a lot of other stuff on my plate. First of all, kind of obviously, I've had Christmas and New Year's, all the stuff that you've been dealing with too. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that stuff, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Holidays. So, something else that happened recently was I turned 22, um, and I always see a movie on my birthday. I always go to the theater, uh, and I chose Mary Poppins Returns as my birthday movie this year because I always want to make it something special. Uh, and I'll get to the movie in just a second, but one quick note before I do, uh, that one of the reasons why I've been slow with the video updating is I've had a film blog for 6 years, and now I'm carrying it on in the YouTube format. But this might be the last year that I talk about film blogging and do reviews and Oscar stuff. Because I think I'm finally ready to make the leap from a film blogger to a filmmaker. That's what I've always wanted to do, and I am currently in the planning stages of a short film that will be released on YouTube, most likely, but it is a big project. I don't want to say too much, but if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram or any of that other stuff, then you should already know what it is. Yeah, so that's just what's happening with me, and it's a lot of excitement. I'm sorry I don't have enough time to do this. But Mary Poppins Returns. This is a really interesting movie to talk about. And the main reason why is the original Mary Poppins is one of my favorite movies of all time. It just is. If you look at the list of, I don't know if I have an actual concrete list of like my top 10, but a lot of the movies that are on my top 10 are movies for younger audience members, movies for younger audiences. And Mary Poppins, the original Mary Poppins has got to be the oldest movie on the list. A lot of them are more recent. Coco is currently at the top of the list. Such a good movie. But what I think is really important to discuss is, I think the number one thing. So first of all, this is a movie that probably did not need to exist. This is not a story of the sequel. The story doesn't scream it needed to be told. We need to continue the narrative because it's not really a narrative-driven movie. They made it because of the nostalgia, and they made it because they wanted money, and that's just what Disney does nowadays. And the overall quality of work is maybe starting to go down a little bit, but a lot of the movies do still have a lot of that magic, if only based on pure nostalgia. So this movie in particular, it is legit a good movie, I think, but it does have its flaws. And I think the number one flaw that critics have been pointing out is that in many, many ways, it's just the first movie again. There's a lot of repeats. All of the songs are clearly inspired by other songs. You can tell where the plot beats go. For example, I'm stammering a lot today. I don't know why. For example, the song "Can You Imagine That" is obviously just this movie's version of "Spoonful of Sugar," and then "The Place Where Lost Things Go" is this movie's version of "Feed the Birds," and "Triple L Like Fantastic" is this movie's version of "Step in Time." Like, you can tell all the key scenes is, oh, this is this movie's version of that scene from the other movie. A lot of it is just on repeat. And I can totally understand where a lot of the criticism is coming from, but I personally don't. I don't hate the movie because it repeats. First of all, I love the first movie, and I feel like this movie does a really good job at recreating the vibe and the atmosphere from that first film. So, yeah, it feels like more of the same, but I honestly don't mind more of the same. Especially with this particular story. because I know I did not really read the books. I read a little bit of it, um, but I know there were a series of books, and they weren't really plot oriented. Each one was just Mary Poppins comes back again, does some adventures, and leaves, and it's not really much of a arc in the narrative. And I think that's very much what we get here. It's Mary Poppins comes back to the Banks house, goes on some adventures, and leaves. And that's pretty much the film. And the only thing that's really different between the first movie, outside of the fact that it's a new generation of Banks children, is the fact that in this new movie there is now a villain. There is a concrete villain. And there is also action scenes. There are two action scenes. One that takes place in the cartoon world and one that takes place in the real world. And at the end. And I understand why some people are complaining, like, there's an action scene in Mary Poppins now? How can you do that? That's not what Mary Poppins was about. But me personally, I don't mind it. I think, first of all, it's a little bit hypocritical for all these critics to be complaining about the movie for sticking super, super close to the original, and then also complaining about, like, the one thing it does differently. Like, because it's different. Like, you really can't have it both ways. And, I did get into this more than I thought I would, even though a lot of it doesn't make sense in regards to the action, because maybe this is kind of a spoiler, but at the end when they have the big chase scene, Mary Poppins, literally steps in with the magic at the very last second, like as a Deus Ex Mary Poppins, if you will. And some people will be like, oh, you can't just do that. You could have done the magic the whole time. I think here's what's interesting about the character of Mary Poppins in both the first film and this one. Mary Poppins is someone who, in every single situation she's in, she is always 100% in control. Even if she can let someone else think that they're in control, she never loses control of the situation, even for a moment. So I think it actually works in a scene like this, in a scene like the ending of this movie, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna allow you to try your best and fail just because I want to see if you can do it. And then if you can't do it, I'll step in the end. But she really does encourage others to work their hardest and try their best. I also liked the scene where Jane and Michael Banks see her again. This idea that their memories of the events of the first film are a little bit... they're not entirely correct. They think they may have imagined it, which I actually thought was really clever. Because all throughout the first film and all throughout this one, Mary Poppins does something magical and then flat out denies that it happened. And I like this idea that she's preparing the children. She doesn't want the children to grow up thinking they're crazy. That she sort of is intentionally being the kind of stern adult that would normally be the villain in this kind of movie. The stern adult that doesn't believe in the magic at the same time that she's making the magic happen. And a lot of those reasons are why I love the first movie so much, and a lot of them are back. And Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins, I think this is a very good performance. It's not Julie Andrews. I don't think you could have possibly recreated what Julie Andrews did. I think that would have been impossible. But I don't think there's any other actress you could have gotten that would have been a better fit for Mary Poppins than Emily Blunt. I feel that Blunt does about as good a job as she could have done, and all the other actors are great. Lin-Manuel Miranda is a genius, obviously, and it's great to see him in the Bert role. Or Jack, whatever you want to call him. I liked Ben Whishaw and Emily Mortimer as the grown-up Banks children. I actually saw a little bit of the child actors from the first film, at least in Jane. I was able to see some of the vocal tics and movements. So I feel like you can tell these were the same characters. And then all the supporting, the cameos, the Meryl Streep role, the Angela Lansbury, and of course Dick Van Dyke. It is unbelievable to see him back in it at this age. I feel like the costume design, Sandy Powell did the costumes, and she was amazing. Particularly the costumes for the hand-drawn sequence. She's going to contend for an Oscar for that scene alone. And then it's also really great to see hand-drawn animation, too, because we haven't seen that in a long time on the big screen. And then I also want to give a shout-out to the effects. Even if some of the effects look fake, they're charming enough, and they feel like they fit the world of the 1964 version, while also being slightly updated. And I like that the sets for London and Cherry Tree Lane looked like the old ones, but still looked real. Like, it was really, really fun. I think when I reviewed Incredibles 2, I said it's so nice to just see the characters again, and just to be in the world again. And that's really what this feels like. It's probably not much as a film on its own, but it is nice just to go back into that world and just to see Mary Poppins again, and just to exist in the same universe. Even if they're just doing more of the same, like, it's pretty much like, I don't know. It's like if you went to a friend's house and you had a really great time, and then you go to the friend's house a second time and you do pretty much the exact same thing they did the first time. I'm not really complaining. Yes, it is similar, but the story of Mary Poppins is not super narrative driven. It's mostly about the experience and the emotions. And returning back to that, I really enjoyed it, even though it's not a perfect film, even though I do understand where the critics are coming from. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good birthday movie, and yeah, those are my thoughts on the film. I also have a few more movies to review. I'll be trying to get back to that, so see ya. Bye.